All right, traders, welcome to today's end of day recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, the 21st. Reminder that it is a holiday shortened weekend, so we've got one more trading day tomorrow for a full day that's the last full day for the rest of the week on Wednesday. Thursday is off, and then Friday you get a half a day. Just to talk about that quickly, and then we'll jump into the NVDA earnings. And by the way, risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. But yeah, volume does trail off quite a bit. And today it just kind of seemed like this afternoon was a little bit dull, but that's also because, when you have a big earnings report, overhang, that's kind of the situation with that too. So kind of a combination of things just adding up to a little bit of a slow afternoon. But yeah, tomorrow will be quiet. But it doesn't mean that you won't see some volatility or whippy moves, especially on Friday. Friday, always, I don't want to say always, but sometimes on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, when nobody's expecting anything, sometimes if there's any type of news that hits the tape, it could be a volatile day. I remember a couple of years ago, I think that was the day that they came out with they discovered like the Omicron virus, going back to the COVID situation. That was announced on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Another year, it was like the OPEC decision, right? And oil went crazy on that Friday after Thanksgiving. So I'm not saying that, that you have to stay in front of your screens on Friday, but it's just funny that every once in a while, and it's not every year that it happens, but for some reason, the Friday after Thanksgiving, sometimes, news likes to kind of emerge then. So that's my quick thought on that, because I will not have a end of day video tomorrow. But you can see what's going on with NVIDIA right here. Basically nothing, right? And people like to say that, oh, they're killing the premium on the options. Yeah, that's true. There's always, for earnings, options are always juiced. They were implying a 7.2% move, and it's not really doing much of anything here. It's kind of explored both sides. To the upside, we went all the way up to about 508, and to the downside, I was actually getting ready to kind of buy some just in case there was a dip in the stock. But you could see it's holding the value area so far for the week. That level is right around 495 on your screen. But I was kind of hoping that we might get a dip for whatever reason down to 462, but we didn't get there. Now, keep in mind the conference call starts in 20 minutes at 5 o'clock, and it might move around based on that. A couple of things that they said, that they're not, which I think people know at this point, but you could see it's a red headline on Bloomberg. Expect sales to China to decline significantly in the fourth quarter. I think for the most part, people know that with the restrictions there going on here, but we'll see what they say on the earnings, and maybe that'll get things to move. Overall, like I think like this is good news. I wasn't, for one, looking for it to kind of blast off, just because I think that there's a lot of good news priced into the stock. We were talking about that on Benzinga just before the close today. I was giving an example of a company that has nothing to do with NVIDIA, but I was giving the example of Abercrombie, which reported this morning, and Abercrombie had like great numbers, but it's just the fact that the bar is set high, right? There's always the expectations, right? Investors sometimes get confused by this, like over time. I've been teaching people a long time about markets and so forth, but I will always get the question, like from somebody on Twitter, like, I don't understand, why is the stock down? They had a good quarter. Well, first of all, like, so you have to get the whole picture, right? Just because a company reports a good quarter, it doesn't mean the stock just goes up, right? You have to look at the path of what the name has been doing over the last quarter. So, so I'll just go through this really quick because I think it's interesting. I always find markets, interesting, but look at this, the sales number for Abercrombie. Expects 12 to 14, saw 10%. So they beat all around, right? And you could dissect their numbers, but I thought the number was really good. So look at the initial reaction to Abercrombie, right? Stock was closed at around $73 yesterday, traded down to 66. Not because they said anything bad, it's just the expectations were a bit too high, right? And then also, they put together, and this was the only similarity that I thought was with NVIDIA, is that it already had two good quarters. This was where the stock was at $28, had a surprise upbeat quarter, ran from that $28 up to $38, then had a second good quarter, and then went from $38, gapped up to 51, and then went all the way up to 74. So, you have to be reasonable in my opinion, you have to be reasonable with your assumptions about what you think is going to happen. Because just 6 months ago, the stock was at $26. It's at 74. So that's where it's these kind of examples. I kind of think of them as case studies, right? It doesn't matter how, but like, even if they would have beat a little bit more, it would have been tough for the name to blast off. Now, it was very nice that the stock recovered because, again, they put in really good numbers. But, given that it's a retail company, right, and retail companies are kind of funny that way, but they can continue to run while there's a popular story going on. But once that story ends, right, we've seen things like Lulu was a great name in the past. Crocs even was really good until they mentioned something bad on their quarter. So going back to NVIDIA, I think that their numbers were great. I kind of breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief because there's so many companies that are connected to NVIDIA and the AI theme and so forth. So, it'll be interesting what they say, or, if this name does come down, it'll be most likely a buying opportunity. But we're consolidating right around the Virgin point of control from, this is where my swing trade ended, right around 493. And since then, it's been kind of moving back and forth and spending some time there. So, yeah, a 7.2% move was what they were implying. You get basically not much at all. And I did have a call fly on for this trade. I wanted to have something on just in case, because I would have felt kind of stupid if the name blasted off. So I wanted to have the cheapest exposure possible. So I had a call fly on that I put on for 75 cents, targeting 525, and most likely I'll lose that money, but that's okay. You have trades on, for a game plan. My game plan was that, hey, that's just in case this name, I didn't think it was going to blast off to the upside, but you have something in place just in case it does. And then my real goal was going to be trying to buy some in here, but I didn't get that opportunity either. Sometimes that's just the way it works. But yeah, I would have been, as I talked about at the end of the day, a buyer at 462. So let's talk about a couple other things. So that's of course, that was the main event for the day, and I get it. It's a big company and has a lot of implications. A lot of semi companies, but I want to talk about a couple other things for the day. So we kind of had a day of, a little bit of a give back day, and I haven't been going over the indices in that much detail. But look, you got a nice, yesterday we had a real clean breakout of the value area for the week in the Qs yesterday. Notice where we kind of got back down into. Right back into the top of value. So this makes up a pretty, like, if you're going to be trading for the rest of the week, you got a very easy decision to make, right? You could be long, you could buy this little bit of a dip that we got today. And where would I get out of that trade in the Qs? Right at 387.32. And that's just kind of the situation that we're in, right now in terms of, I was going to mention like some of the name, some of the magnificent 7 or 8 names, whatever it is, but sometimes it's just easier to trade the Qs when they're all kind of moving together. Something that I noted earlier was just that what I've been noticing is that there's this relationship. I'll have to do a little bit more work into this, but I've just noted very loosely that when the Qs are down and they're not, like when you have, out of the 5 or 6 names that you may be watching in the Qs, the bigger names, when like 4 out of 5 of those names are down, right? Meaning like the Amazon, Meta, Google, or Apple, right? What the name that's up is Tesla, right? And I've talked about sometimes it works that way with the small caps. And Tesla did, if you're watching this name, you've got a very easy level to watch too, because this was like an easy day trade for those who like this name, right? Because it rallied right up until its resistance for the week. So that's 243.73, right? Again, that's based on, this value area is based on all of last week's volume at price activity. So support, resistance, and it's one of those situations where it didn't really have enough strength, and nor did I think it was going to have strength. It needs a bigger story for it to kind of break through short-term resistance. But tomorrow I would watch that 243.73. But yeah, what I've found is that lately, and again, this is just a short-term phenomenon, is that when the Qs are really strong, like they were yesterday, Tesla doesn't participate. But when everything else is weak, it seems like Tesla actually is like, it's like a perfect contrarian play. So why do I mention that? So that you can kind of pick up on that pattern recognition next time, because when Apple's down and the rest of those names that I mentioned, it seems to have some legs to it. Another name that I'm watching that I've been more positive recently, first time that I've really traded this thing, which is the ARM Holdings. I like this pattern. This is oftentimes like, if I'm going to get involved in a newer name, I like to wait for a few months, right? I like to wait until, because we've seen more often than not, these newer IPO names, they're already, it's not like it used to be. When I started trading, well, I guess I could go through many different occasions, but I remember like the heyday of like 1999 and 2000 with the dot-com bubble, right? Names would go public and everybody would be buying them and they'd go up 200, 300%. Now, it seems like these names are already, all the move has happened in terms of like the private equity, prior to the name going public. It almost seems like a lot of these names, once they go public, they're duds for months to a year, right? And still, I see a lot of individual investors get excited when these names come out, but they're already at a rich valuation, and where the money's been made is in the like the venture capital, like the seed capital. So that said, I usually don't get involved for weeks or months. But what I like here is you do have a nice technical setup here, in the fact that here's where it went public. It went lower, and again, I'm never looking to buy the absolute low. I don't really look for that. I look for buyers to kind of come back in, right? For institutions, and you can see it's now pushing above, where it was back in September. So I did get, I didn't chase it yesterday. I took advantage of the dip today and got long today in ARM. So that's one semi that I think is going to be interesting. I think it's a good company, but it's a good company that comes at a high cost. What's the it's an expensive company, right? There's not even a PE listed there. Estimated PE for next year is a 55. So this is not a cheap company by any means. All right. And then I thought what was interesting is, waiting for some of these companies, like Walmart had a good earnings report. But again, same thing, like we just went over with the situation with Abercrombie and NVIDIA, that just ran up too much into the quarter. So now you kind of wait. It's usually you wait the 3 days is standard, but before you call the girl or guy that you met. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's the 3 days after earnings that you basically wait until there's some digestion afterwards and shakes people out. And you got a nice level here, 200-day moving average. And as I say, NVIDIA, Walmart seems to do this quite a bit, right? It comes in and kind of tests the 200-day moving average, right? And again, I like to have levels where where you're going to be right or wrong. If it breaks the 200-day moving average, then no good. But for now, it's kind of holding that. And I did go after this. I also noted that there was a little bit of like a false breakdown for the day. Notice the RSI. If you use the RSI study, notice that it made a low on the earnings day, and since then it's been getting stronger. So you actually had a bit of a bullish divergence with this name. So I'll be long as long as it stays above 155. I did take a profit target on the move up, because I caught it very nicely. But I also like this group, headed into the Black Friday sales, right? There might be a trade there. Costco also like ran up crazy up to 599, is settling in here at around this 570 level. So I like Costco. And again, I like to show you in these videos just some different names. I'll get to that in just a sec, the reason why. Different names, not just all high-tech software. So Costco is one name, and then Amazon also saw some call activity. Now, Amazon, I wanted to start with this weekly chart because, yes, it's pausing at the resistance for the year, right? 147.74. It's almost where we got to back in July, or excuse me, September, and it's going to have to break through there, right? So it's got a little bit of a barrier, but we see some call positioning, and maybe it can possibly do that and push to this Virgin point of control at 150. So still some overhead resistance to deal with both on the weekly chart and on the daily chart, but at least that 153.66 is a little bit of ways from where this is now. Watch to see that could be the one catalyst why somebody's buying some calls. But yeah, if you look at some of the names, this is a point that I've been making this week. Now it's fun when yesterday all of these names went nuts, right? Palantir was up big last week, yesterday. DraftKings was up big yesterday, and a whole bunch of other software names. But you really have to be careful with your position size with some of these names. Why? Because they don't just move like a Walmart or a bigger or a Meta or a Google. Like they really will move quickly. This name was down 7% today, right? No major news. It's just the fact that this is how these names move, right? So I see a lot of people where they're saying, "Hey, these are my holdings," right? It's Palantir, it's DraftKings, it's five other software names. You really have to be careful because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Now, if we continue to have a raging small cap growth move, which we've had so far, we've had a really nice November. And I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if it's going to continue that way, but I always think from time to time is that you're going to see some profit taking in some of these names and it be redistributed. So I try to educate people in these end of day videos just to say, be careful about putting all your eggs in one basket. And I think people kind of learn that too in 2022, where they're holding a whole bunch of small cap growth software names because they do move together, right? And these names are a little bit better to buy on a little bit of dips. Like, so I purposely sold DraftKings yesterday just because, I just didn't want exposure to after a big move like we saw yesterday, right? Just the odds that that's going to happen a second day in a row are not very good. And you don't want to get caught with five names that go down 5% on average 5%, right? It's tough to get that back, right? So it's important, I think, to kind of just know where your exposure is. And again, it's not to say that you can't have positions in these things, but look at the volatility, look at the average true range so that you understand how these things move, because they're going to move much different than, a Home Depot, a Starbucks, a Nike, they're just going to move with a lot more volatility to them. All right, so that's it. That's what I wanted to cover so far. I did get long some Southern Copper. It didn't close perfectly, but I'm looking for this 78.43. So again, like understanding that like today, this was where there was more outperformance. I don't really like the gold miners, so I did not get involved in that group, but I don't mind the metals group a little bit. First Solar was a name that I talked about yesterday, and I sold this name just because solar is such a difficult name. I sold it at the close yesterday. Was down a little bit, and I would keep an eye on. This is a name that I might check back into, but I have an alert. And I have that right around 160, 130 to see, if it can hang in here, that's a good thing, right? Then we know maybe the majority of the pain is gone in the solar group. But I would rather wait until buyers kind of start to move this back up, right? And then I can aim for 168. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.